This podcast is for voice teachers and coaches to answer the question, how do I grow my teaching business and even break out of that one-on-one lesson model so that I can reach and teach who I want whenever I want? I'm your host, Allie Tyler, voice teacher of over a decade and marketing and business coach for fellow voice teachers. Welcome to the Voicepreneur podcast. This is such an important topic. We're going to be talking about your ideal client, our favorite topic, but I really hope that this is going to provide so much more clarity and so much more potency even around what you think of when you think about your quote unquote ideal client. This is such an interesting, nuanced conversation. I literally feel like I could write an entire freaking course on this topic. It is one of those topics that we all think about, that we all talk about, that we all have questions about. How do I teach my ideal student? How do I find my ideal client? Who is my ideal client, my ideal student, right? There's so much to talk about here. So I wanted to share this because I just got off of the Voicepreneur program group call, which was so freaking good, y'all. Oh man, these calls, it's my favorite part of the entire program. We do hot seat coaching twice a month, and it is just such a juicy conversation in all the right ways. So one of the voice teachers had brought this up, and she asked about what happens if you are not necessarily teaching all your ideal students. Like you look at your student roster and you're like, there's definitely people on here that don't quote unquote fit my ideal student avatar or whatever you want to, use to describe your ideal student. That's actually a quite common term that we talk about in business, your ideal student avatar. I used to really love that term, and now over the years, I've kind of fallen out of love with it. It's not my favorite way to think about your ideal student, because when we think about an avatar and we think about coming up with this fake person that, hits all these boxes and they do all of these things that make them ideal for us, then that can feel really boxed in. And that can also feel like, and I've heard this a lot from voice teachers, I feel like I'm being really picky now. Right? So there is definitely some problematic things when it comes to creating your ideal student avatar. And that's one of the big things I actually do want to talk about in this episode. I'm not going to get carried away. I'm going to talk about it in just a second, but I really want to bring this home into what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is what to do when you're not teaching your ideal student, just like the voice teacher on today's group call, and also what happens if, let's say, you are starting new, or you are giving your brand and business a little refresh, or you're coming back to teaching after a long time, like myself, and you're not quite sure if, like I said, you're being too picky, who your ideal student actually is, should you be taking all of the people? And we got to think about a lot of things here, right? Now, here's the thing. I just put out a post actually very recently on my Instagram all about what I would do if I were going to start my voice teaching business from scratch. Hint, hint, I am. I am literally in this moment. I am starting it not necessarily from scratch, but I am coming back to teaching after taking a little hiatus there. And one of the things that I posted in there was that it is so important that you get, and I think I use this exact language, so forgive me, crystal fucking clear about who you want to teach and who you don't want to teach, and saying that you're not available for those who are not quite the right fit. Now, I couldn't put this in the entire post because you only have so many letters in a caption, but there is a lot of nuance to that particular concept of saying yes and saying no to what we think of as the right fit. And I'm really excited to really expand this conversation today because it's not so black and white. It's not so black and white. If you're looking at your current roster of students and you're like, some of them are, I would say, my ideal students, but some of them are not, or you're coming back to teaching and you're like, am I being too picky with who my ideal student is, or who is my ideal student? I'm not even entirely sure. Then I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because we're going to be talking about what to do if you're in this scenario. So here's how I like to think about running a business. I've said this in previous episodes, always worth saying again. There are, in my mind, 2 stages that we really go through when we are growing a business. You are either in the learning stage or the growing stage. Now, we can be teeter-tottering back and forth between the two. We can be in the growing stage and of course be learning things. We can be in the learning stage and of course be growing things. But I really just want to think about this big picture here for a second, okay? So we all want to be in the growing stage. We all just want to skip the learning and go to the growing, right? We just want to make the money now. We want the students in the door. But here's the problem. You are not going to grow in your business until you have truly owned being in the learning stage first. It is so important. Now, this conversation is actually all about the learning stage. So I want to think about this for a hot second in kind of a funny direction here. Imagine that you have this ideal student, quote unquote, avatar all laid out. You know exactly, their age and their demographic and their personality type and their seriousness about singing and all of that stuff. And by the way, huge side note, the way that we describe our ideal student is not by saying things like, well, I really want them to practice. Well, I really want them to care. Well, I really want them to be dedicated and create. It's like, yes, don't we all? We literally all want that. Okay. That is not specific enough. So if that's something that you're thinking about in terms of your ideal student, that they are dedicated, they are devoted, they're serious, they want to practice, they want to get better, all those types of things, that's not it. So when we're thinking about all of these kind of demographics and even psychographics of our ideal client, we can get a little carried away in who this person is, which is why I don't like using that avatar word anymore, because then it really boxes us into this is the one type of student that I'm going to be teaching. And truthfully, let's be real, we are not supposed to have an entire roster of students that are all the exact same person. That would first and foremost be literally impossible because every human is a little different. We are all unique individuals. And that's not a truly enriching experience. Like if you had a roster of all the same types of students, I bet you anything, you are going to get bored. You're going to get bored. It's just the nature of it. And like I said, it's literally impossible. So why are we chasing this? Why is this our goal? That our entire roster has to be this particular type of student. It's just not going to help you as a teacher, and it's not going to enrich you, and it's not going to make you a great teacher. Let's be real. So I like to think about this like people come into our lives, whether they are students, whether they are friends or teachers or mentors, whatever, whoever they are, people come into our lives because they help us think differently, and they challenge us, and they teach us something. Right? That's what we are all meant to do. That's why community and having a society and being social and being around other people and having people in our network is so important, because we are better and different and evolved humans because of the other people that we interact with. Our students are the exact same way. They're the exact same way. So I want you to think about this from a really high level perspective here, okay? We're not getting in the nitty gritty of who your ideal student is and they have to check all of these boxes. We're really thinking about this as, what if the students that are in my studio are all there for a reason, and they're all there to help teach me something new? Now, of course, there are exceptions to this. We are going to have crappy students. And I mean that with love. I really do. You know what I'm talking about, okay? We're talking about those students who don't practice, who don't show up, who do those no-shows, who just are not serious about this. That's who I would consider a crappy student. Are they a crappy person? No, probably not. But they're a crappy student. They're a crappy client, right? And those are the types of people that I'm always advocating to say no to because they are going to drain the living hell out of you. So that's what I'm talking about when I say it's very important to get crystal fucking clear on who it is that you are teaching and not teaching. But also, I want you to really think about this in that ideal is actually a really funky word. And that word is what's tripping us up. Because when we think of ideal, we think of it as simply dreamy and this perfect student, this ideal, exactly what we want type of client. But what if ideal can also mean that they are ideal for that particular chapter of life you're in? What if ideal means that they are ideal for teaching you something new, or helping you see a blind spot, or helping you grow as a teacher? And oftentimes, we can't curate who that person is. We think we know who they are, but like I said, people come into our lives because they help us think differently. They challenge us. They teach us something new. And if that's the case, we can't force and control the people that we interact with in our life. That's universal magic happening. So I really like to think about this like, is this student helping me learn something or helping me grow as a teacher that perhaps my ideal student wouldn't be able to do? Learning stage, right? Owning the learning stage of business. So if you have a good idea of who your ideal student is, but you're afraid of being too picky or you don't have enough of them in your studio, here's the question I want you to ask yourself. How can I embrace this learning stage and take on a student that maybe isn't quote unquote ideal on paper, but is really going to help me as a teacher? How can I learn from the students that aren't what I would call ideal? So I want to give you an example of this. When I first moved to Colorado from California, and this was 7 years ago. Is that right? Yeah, 7 years ago. I didn't know anybody, and I was literally starting fresh. I was coming out of living in a van for 9 months, so I hadn't taught voice lessons in a hot minute, and I needed the money, right? So I needed the money. I was starting fresh. I had zero networking out here. So I get this new student, and it's a male. He's around my age. And it was such an interesting experience because he signed up for voice lessons with me after our intro lesson. And he told me this in the intro lesson. I don't care about singing. I don't want to learn how to sing. I'm an actor, and I just want to learn how to speak better. I want to get better at public speaking, and I want to understand how my voice works. And I remember after that intro session, I was like, conundrum. This is really interesting. I literally had never taught that student before. And right when he said, I don't give a shit about singing, like I'm not here to sing, I remember thinking, what are we doing then? This is what I do. I'm a singing teacher. I don't teach speaking. I teach singing, right? But him saying that phrase, I want to learn how the voice works, really caught my ears because I was like, that is interesting to me. Maybe this is a blind spot for me as a teacher. And maybe not necessarily a blind spot, but something that I can better work on, right? An area that I can grow in as a teacher is actually knowing how to teach how our voice works. And it wasn't something I had solely focused on with my students. We did a lot of singing, and we did a lot of musicality and expression and performance and artistry, right? But I didn't go into depth about how the voice works. And I, as a teacher, I know that the best way to learn something is to teach it. And I know that you feel the exact same way. We learn so much from teaching, right? So that was a moment where I decided, you know what? He's not my ideal student. Definitely not. He literally doesn't even want to sing in these voice lessons. But I'm going to take him as a student because I am not quite in the growing stage yet. I'm still in my learning stage. I am learning what type of teacher I am, what type of students I want to be attracting, how to really set, my business systems up, and how to just grow, all the things that help you grow. I was learning about all of that when I first moved to Colorado. I was still in that learning stage. And so I decided, because I'm in that learning stage, I need money. I need to actually have a little financial stability. And I really wanted to experience something that was different than what I had been doing all of those previous years. I decided to take him on as a student. And it was awesome. He was certainly not my ideal student, but I did not count down the minutes, and I did not dread the lessons that were coming up with him. I actually really enjoyed them, and they were helping me become a better teacher. And that's the key difference, my friend. If you are counting down the minutes, if you look at your calendar and you see that so-and-so is going to have a lesson that day and you're like, oh, fuck, this is not what I want to be doing with my time. And you literally dread it and you can feel that in your body and you're not enjoying the lesson as you are teaching it, that means that they're truly not your ideal student, right? But ideal, again, doesn't have to be what we conjure it up to be. Ideal can literally mean that it is ideal for you in that particular chapter of life. And they may not necessarily look like your ideal student avatar, the description that you have in your head, but they are helping you grow and they are helping you get to the next level. So ask yourself these questions, truly. Ask yourself, how can I learn from the students that I may not perceive as ideal? If I am enjoying my time with them and I'm not counting down the minutes and doing all that, and I they're pretty fun to teach. They may not be ideal for me, but they're pretty fun to teach. How can I learn from them? How are they going to help me become a better teacher? What are the types of things and the types of gaps that are being filled in my overall wholesomeness and education as a teacher that they are helping me fill? Such important mindset shifts. So I hope that this is helpful for you. I hope that this really clarifies what we think of when we think of our ideal student. And like I said, I could literally talk all day about this. I truly could write an entire course just about your ideal student because it's such a deep and such a nuanced conversation. So let me know what you took away from this episode. I would love to chat with you. You know that I'm always in my DMs on Instagram. You can take a screenshot of this episode if you really enjoyed it and share it on your Instagram stories. Share it with all your voice teacher friends. Let me know what really resonated with you. Let me know who your ideal student is. I just think that's always a very fun conversation, and we can kind of nitpick that together a little bit. And thank you again so much for being here. I truly appreciate spending time with you. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day, that you are bringing in so much gratitude and joy and ease and simplicity into this new year. And I will catch you in the next episode. Oh my goodness, that was so juicy, and I'm so glad you're still here listening. You are amazing, and I can't wait to see what you take away from this episode and what you bring into your teaching business. Oof, it is going to be so good. If you want to come and see for yourself what it means to grow and scale your teaching business, come and check out the resources inside of the show notes or visit us over at thevoicepreneur.com. If you enjoyed this episode, take a screenshot, share it on your Instagram stories, and tag me at The Voicepreneur. Or if that's not your vibe, that's totally fine. Share it with your two best voice teacher friends so that we can continue spreading the good word that you can create a sustainable, spacious, and fun as fudge cake teaching business that makes an enormous impact on your students' lives and your life and your bank account. It's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I love you so much, and I can't wait to see how your business changes your life. I'll catch you in the next episode.